All right, everyone. Shabbat shalom, shalom. To all of you that will listen to this and watch this later on YouTube this weekend. It's Shabbat night right now for us. We are the Wakened by Yahuwah Assembly and Yahuwah Almighty Yahusha Messiah. I'm Brother Doug. My mom's sister Sharon's here with me. We got Brother Yahusha, um, Sister Marissa, Brother Dennis. So we are going to be continuing our chronological book by book studies. So we're already going through Ecclesiastes. So I figured since First and Second Chronicles are somewhat in that same time period, as far as a lot of the events that happens with Solomon and all that. So I figured this is one of the few books we haven't gotten to yet around that time period. So we're going to start at First Chronicles chapter 1, and I'll start us off here. So a lot of this, guys, try not to get bored. I know it's a lot of genealogies, but I can promise you that there's purposes for these genealogies. There's reasons for them. Like I said, off the record with our group earlier, the atheists sometimes, excuse me, guys, got a little acid interjection here. Atheists sometimes will use these genealogies in First and Second Chronicles, and sometimes it seems like they're contradicting Genesis, and they'll try to say, "Well, see, this is why you can't trust the Bible." But there's one thing that Chuck Missler, even though he wasn't of this actual faith and he was a Christian, one saying he had to say about the Bible that I always hold dear to is just when you think there's a contradiction, you should get a little excited because that means there's something that we're not understanding.
Hmm.
Or it could be that our view of the scripture that we're reading is skewed. So
Hmm.
I always remember that saying that he had, that you should be excited when you see so-called contradictions because that means that there's things that we need to unlearn. So anyway, um First Chronicles chapter 1. Um, Adam, Seth, and Enosh. So it starts off with these guys. And Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, Noah, the sons of Noah, Ham, Shem, Japheth, the sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madam, Yavan, or Yuvan, I should say. That's actually the
Hmm.
correct Hebrew because O originally was a UA sound.
Hmm.
So it would be Yuvan or Yuan, Halisa, Tubal, Mushuk, and Tiraz, the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz. Again, the 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 Ashkenaz Jewish people. This is where a lot of them come from. Is Ashkenaz? Okay, they are children of Gomer, not Shem.
Hmm.
Okay, so again, this is proof that if someone is like 100% Ashkenaz, they cannot be Shemites. Okay, I mean, if they're like fully 100%, without any mixture. Um, okay, we got it. Rifa, Togarma, the sons of Yuvan or Yuan, Halisa, no, Tarshish. I think that's how you pronounce that. Tarshish,
Hmm.
the Scythians, the Rudians, the sons of Ham, Cush and Mitzrayim, Put, Canaan, and the sons of Cush, Saba, Avila, Sabatha, Ragama, Sabathaka, sons of Regma, Saba, Dedan, or Dadan. I think I'm at what, verse 11
10.
or 10. Okay. Okay. Cush began, my bad, Cush begot Nimrod, or how the Greek says it here, Nabrud. Okay, he began to be a giant hunter or mighty hunter in the earth, or on the earth. Now, the reason it says mighty in a lot of Bibles, just FYI, if you look at the Hebrew and the Greek, the word Gibberim can either mean strong or mighty, or strength, or it can mean giant. So depending on the context. Now we know from Genesis in the Septuagint they translated it as giant, so that's why I'm reading it as giant hunter, like he's a hunter of giants. Okay. The sons of Shem, Elam, and Ashur, which in modern English became known as the Assyrian or Assyria. So, where in your Bible it says Assyria, it's in the Hebrew Ashur. Um, so that's verse. Okay, so that's kind of weird. My version here jumps from verses 10 to 17.
Oh, I
It's
have.
very
Oh,
weird.
it's talking about Mitzrayim was the father
Yeah.
of Ludites. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So the Septuagint misses a couple verses here. Okay, because it jumps to verse 17
Wow.
as with Asher. It has it marked as verse 17 if I'm not mistaken. So it seems like there's a couple of. Let me just see here real quick.
Skipping over Canaan.
Yeah, it's interesting. Possibly the original chronicler didn't need to list Canaan's lineage is another possibility.
It's interesting though to see all those tribes that is from it.
Mainly because I think Canaan's lineage, don't they already do that in Genesis 10?
Probably.
Yeah. So, yeah, see,
Right.
11 to 16 is not in the LXX.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so you have 17 is Asher, Elam, and Shem. And again, this Asher is actually a Shemite. So the original Assyrians are rumored to be Shemites because of the guy Ashur of Genesis 10. It's rumored that supposedly at some point in time Nimrod would have killed him and took over Assyria, and then he became known as quote unquote the Assyrian or Ashur. That Nimrod would have literally took his identity, which is not quite. If you know who we believe to be the beast, it's not outside Nimrod's character to do that, to take someone else's identity. So that's kind of the conspiracy theory out there of what happened to the Asher of Seth's line, because you don't see him anymore after Genesis 10. He's like nowhere to be found. Um, but anyway, so yeah, there's actually a lot missing in the after I read this chapter, Mom, we might want to go to the ones that are omitted from that you could read from your version just to see. Okay, so 18's not there, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Okay, so the LXX jumps to 24 here. Doesn't have 18 to 23, so we're at verse 24 here of chapter 1 of First Chronicles. Arpaxad, Selah, Eber, Phaleg, Ragan, Sarug, Nahor, Terah. Now Terah and Nahor, remember, Terah is the dad of Abram,
Right.
or Abraham. Okay, so Abraham and the sons of Abraham, Yitzhak and Yishmael. These are the generations, their generations, the firstborn of Ishmael, Nabaoth and Kedar, Nabdil and Masaam, Mazma, Iduma, Mesa, Kodan, Taman. That's interesting. They got an Iduma that's part of Ishmael's line. That's very similar, just not trying to confuse it here. It's very similar in the Greek to Edom, but it's not. Because I think Edom in Greek is Idumia, so there's no E there. So it's very similar though in the spelling in the Greek. Yeter, Naphes, Kedma, these the sons of Yishmael. And the sons of Keturah, Abraham's concubine, she bore him Zamram, Yaksan, Midian, Madam, Subak, Su'eh, and the sons of Yaksan, Dedan, and Sabai. So that's interesting. We don't think that, his concubine was that important, but Yahuwah dedicated a chapter here in First Chronicles to list his genealogy of his descendants through his concubine there. And the sons of Midian, Gefer, Ophir, and Hanuk, Abida, and Aldada. All these were the sons of Keturah.
Mm-hmm.
And Abraham begot Isaac, and the sons of Isaac were Jacob and Esau. So now we get Edom. The sons of Esau, Eliphaz, Raguel, Yaul, Gloom, and Korah, or Kor. The sons of Eliphaz, Taman, Umar, Sufar, Guutham, Kenaz, Tamna, and Amalek. So the Amalekites.
Mm-hmm.
The sons of Raguel, Nakez, Zereh, Sum, Muz. The sons of Sair, Lutan, Subal, Stabagun, Ana, Dasun, Usar, and Disan. And the sons of Lutan, Kuri, and Aman. And the sister of Lutan was Tamna. And the sons of Subal, Alun, Makanath, Tabael. No, no. And the sons of Sabagun, Ayov, Sunan. The sons of Sunan, Dasun. Let's see, Daasun, the sons of Daasun, and Amarun, and let's see, I guess this would be Hashbun and Yathram and Haran. And the sons of Husar, Balaam, Zukam, and Akan, and the sons of Disan, Us, and Aran, or Haran. And these are the kings: Balak, son of Beor. The name of his city was Denabah. Balak died, and this is interesting. Very interesting. Remember this name here. Balak died, and Jobab, the son of Zerah of Bosor, reigned in his stead. Now this is Job, FYI. So this is why genealogies are important. It shows you where Job lived and when he became king of Edom. So he was king after Balak. Now there's a lot of confusion because you go to Numbers, the book of Numbers, where this probably was happening around that time. The problem is that I think they call the person Balaam, son of Beor. So there's a Balak that was king. It could be a different person because I think Balaam was what? He was supposed to be a diviner, right?
I think
Balaam,
so.
son of Beor, like he claimed to be a prophet of Yahuwah, but he was really just he was someone supposedly that's trying to be a prophet of Yahuwah, but took hires, try to get bribed. So supposedly, I guess it would be somewhere around that time. You also had a Balak that was a king of Edom before Ubab or before Ayub. So according to Job 40, I think it's chapter 40, at the end of it in the Septuagint, Ayub was also known as Ubab before. So anyway, and Ubab died, and Assam in the land of Temanites reigned in his stead. Assam died, and Adad, son of Barad, reigned in his stead, who smote Midian in the plain of Moab. And the name of the city was Gathaim. And Adad died, and Sabla of Maseka reigned in his stead. Sabla died, and Shaul of Rehoboth, or Rehoboth, by the river reigned in his stead. Shaul died, and Bala Nur, son of Akuber, reigned in his stead. And Belanar died, and Adad, son of Barad, reigned in his stead. And the name of the city was Fugar, or Fugur. No. The princes the princes of Edom, Prince Temnah, Prince Goladad, no, Prince Yathar, Prince Elmas, Prince and Prince Elibamas, Prince Alas, Prince Finon, okay, Prince Kenaz, Prince Taman, Prince Bobsar, Prince Magadiel, Prince Zaphuin. These are the princes of Edom. So towards the end here, we have all of the genealogy of Esau here.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Job is one of the kings of Esau's lineage. He's probably the only Edomite at that time to be converted, or I'm not the only one, but one of the very few. You had him and his buddies that were really the only ones that crossed over to being a Hebrew. Um, Let me see if I can find it in Job chapter 40, I think it is, or it might be. I might have mistaken. Maybe it's 42. Yeah. So Job 42 17, just to show what I'm talking about here in the LXX. This is missing in the Masoretic here. It says, "And Ayub died, an old man, full of days, and it is written that he will rise again," meaning talking about the resurrection, "with
Mm-hmm.
those whom Yahuwah raises up." This man is described in the Syriac book, meaning Aramaic, as living in the land of Uz on the borders of Idumea, Edom, and Arabia, and his name before was Ubab. And having taken a wife, he begot a son whose name was um, Anan or Anun, and he himself was the son of his father Zerai, of the sons of Esau, and of his mother Bosora, so that he was the fifth from Abraham. See, that's key there. So it's
Mm-hmm.
also telling you a little bit of his genealogy here. He was the fifth generation from Abraham. And these were the kings who reigned in Edom. And then he gives you Balak. We already read about him in the chapter we just read, Balak, son of Beor. The name of his city was Denabah, who after Balak, Ubab, who is called Ayub, who is called Job, and after him, Asam, who was governor out of the country of Taman. So it lists all this stuff, and it lists that his friends were also Edomites. You also had Eliphaz, who was of the
Mm-hmm.
children of Esau, king of the Temanites, Beldad. And so basically, as far as we know at this time, those are the only like crossed over ones of the lineage of Esau were Job and his friends, basically. So, but yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff from this genealogy. Mom, do you want to read the verses that I didn't have in mine?
Oh, all right. Well, let's see.
I think it starts like around 10.
11, I think.
Yeah, 10 or 11 it
Yeah, I
starts
think
at.
it starts right at 11. Mitzrayim was the father of the Ludites. Give me just a
Mm-hmm.
second. Okay. Anamites, Lehabites, Nephites, Pathrusites, Cas Caslus heights, and the parentheses from whom the Philistines came, and Caphtorites. Canaan was the father of Sidon, his firstborn, and of the Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Archites, Sinites, Arvadites, Semarites, and Hamathites. So those are the verses that
Mm-hmm.
were not in your reading. I don't remember
I think
any
there's
others.
18 to 23 as well.
Okay.
Yeah, was not in my reading.
All right. 18. Arphaxad was the father of Shelah, and Shelah
Yep.
the father of Eber. Two sons were born to Eber. One was named Peleg because in his time the earth was divided. His brother was named Yoktan. Yoktan was the father of Almadad, Shaleth, Hatza Armaraveth, Yera, Hadoram, Utsal, Dikla, Obal, Abimael, Sheba, Ophir, Havilah, and Yobab. All these were sons of Yoktan. Okay. Yeah, because you picked it up at 24.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, all right. So, anyone got anything to share here? I thought it was pretty interesting some of the stuff we went through here.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Um,
So Job was an Edomite?
yep, ethnic.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
he was an ethnic son. According to, you could look this up. I think in the Bretons you have, or Septuagint that you have, and you'll find it in Job 42:17 in the LXX. It gives you the whole paragraph of his lineage and that he was a king of Edom, that he was called Jobab before, and you'll see that in Genesis it has his genealogy as
Mm-hmm.
Jobab, and First Chronicles we just read about his genealogy as a descendant of Esau. So yeah, the Masoretic leaves it out. It leaves it out.
Mm-hmm.
Probably because they wouldn't want Gentiles to know that Job, someone that's a pillar of both, I would say all Judeo Christian religions, pretty much esteem Job as a big time prophet and a big time, um, you know, Israelite. The Jewish people especially would not want people knowing that he was an Edomite,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because them and Edom really got into it. Eventually, when Edom finds Rome and all that, the Edomites, aka the Romans, and the real Yahudim and the Edomites
Mm-hmm.
always had problems. So
Mm-hmm.
I think when the rabbis came about and wrote the Masoretic text, they're like, oh, we got to leave that paragraph out. We got can't can't include that. Plus the fact that it's only found in the Greek version of Job. You can't find it in any. So their super idolizing of the Hebrew language would not allow them to put it in there too, because this is only found in the Septuagint version of Job. As far as him being, it by default, it's the only place that he's identified with Jobab of First Chronicles
Mm-hmm.
1 and in the book of Genesis. So they most likely being anti-Greek, a lot of those rabbis would not want this included.
Yeah.
And they would, because you got to understand in the first century when they were making the canons and everything, the Jewish tradition of, the JPS Tanakh and all that
Mm-hmm.
was that only Hebrew source. So anything Greek, anything Aramaic, anything Syriac was not going to be included, and that's why, because there's things taken out of Esther too. Believe it or not, there's things taken out of Esther where if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have a Septuagint or a Catholic Bible or a King James
Mm-hmm.
1611, you'll be missing portions of the Book of Esther,
Mm-hmm.
and they did not believe in keeping that. Now, what was very weird to me about that is that the Protestants followed that idolizing of the Hebrew language, yet they included the Apocrypha, which I find interesting
Mm-hmm.
because there is no Hebrew Apocrypha, FYI, for people out there.
Mm-hmm.
Every apocryphal book that's in the 1611 is Latin. It's from the Latin Vulgate. So it's kind of contradictory what the Protestant reformers did. They 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 didn't want to use the Septuagint emphatically because it's Greek and not Hebrew, but yet they used stuff from the Latin Bible. To me, it's very contradictory. Not even contradictory, just hypocritical in my mind. They might as well used the Septuagint because you used the Apocrypha anyway, which came from the Septuagint, which came from the Latin Vulgate. So I don't know, but anyway,
So when it says that Esau I hated, that's not the whole.
not every Edomite. No,
Okay, yeah.
no, he's actually talking about the person Esau. To answer that question, he's specifically talking about Esau because
Mm-hmm.
it's about election in that chapter. It's about predestination. It's that Yahuwah never chose the person Esau.
Mm-hmm.
Is that he basically, he loved Jacob, the person Jacob. He hated Esau because he hated Esau's works. He hated Esau's intentions. Esau was selling his birthright.
Yep.
But the Edomites also became wicked. They had a chance. They could have, a lot of them could have been grafted in if they wanted to, and if Yahuwah elected them, but many of them became more wicked than their own dad.
But
As far
look at what the Father allowed to happen to Job.
yeah, yeah, I
Right?
don't think that's because he hated him. I think that's because he told Satan from the beginning that he had confidence in Job. He said, because Satan's talking about, oh, there's no one on this earth I can test and put through trials. And Yahuwah, he almost like makes a bet with the devil. It is really what happens in the book of Job. I know we've been taught otherwise through the Christianity and that garbage, but the reality is this is what happens. You could read it for yourself to test what I'm about to say. Yahuwah says to Job, says to Satan, haven't you considered my servant Job? So it's clear he's elected him. He said, my servant.
But
So
he never said that
clearly,
he was righteous like he did
yeah,
with
he did.
Abraham.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. The end of the book. I'll show you right here, Job 42. He rebukes Job's friends, and he even rebukes the youngest of his friends, the one that seemed to be righteous. He even rebuked. And he said, he tells Job to offer a sacrifice for his friends to atone for them. So obviously, Job was not in sin the whole time. See, that's where a lot of philosophy from the Christian church poisons people on what the book of Job is actually about. Job was never self-righteous. That's what the Christian preachers want to preach. But if you know the verse I'm talking about, Mom, Job 42, where he says right here, verse 15. Actually, no. Let me go up. Let me go up here.
Even at the beginning, it says he was blameless and upright.
Yeah, the first chapter of the book.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people, mainly preachers out there that should know better. Christian preachers out there preach this garbage narrative about the book of Job. That's what happens, and then people get poisoned in the mind from these preachers. The reality is that Yahuwah himself, even at the end of the book, says, my servant Job was not in sin regarding this. You guys were. So he even says here, right here, verse 10 of chapter 42 of Job, Yahuwah prospered Ayub, and when he prayed for his friends, he forgave them their sin. And Yahuwah gave Ayub twice as much.
Right.
So basically, the book says in a nutshell is about testing Job. It's not that Job was in sin. If anything, that book exposes the what is it called? The
I know what you're trying to say.
What's that false gospel called in the charismatic?
Yeah. The
prosperity gospel. That's why I showed you guys that meme, that funny meme the other day, where the wrestler like slams the prosperity gospel. You got the big heavy guy body slamming him. That it's a joke of a meme, but it's true. That's what the book of Job is about. It's about destroying the heresy of the prosperity gospel. Just because bad things are happening to you does not mean you're in sin.
That's right.
That's the whole purpose of the book. And preachers have gotten wrong for so many generations, so many thousands of years about the book of Job. They think it's about self-righteousness. No, it's not. It's not about Job being self-righteous or being that he thought his works was going to save him or whatever they want to claim. It's not about that. It's about destroying the idea that you're always going to be safe and you're never going to go through trials if you're obedient. That is not a biblical concept at all. And that's the purpose of the book of Job. It's showing that Yahuwah, those that he has faith in, that he considers a real blameless servant, sometimes they're going to go through hell on this earth.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Yahuwah looks at them, he has more confidence in them than someone that's lukewarm.
Yeah.
That's the reality. So see, people don't understand this because they don't read the whole book. They don't read the whole book. And they take select portions and try to create a whole new philosophy, which the book is not even about. The book is about showing that Ayub, even though he was struggling with understanding why Yahuwah was doing these things to him, he kept his mouth from sinning.
Right.
Where all of his other friends are, Well, if you didn't sin against Yahuwah, which, by the way, they were pouring out false accusations against him. That's why they were in sin. They were saying things and then they didn't know the situation. A lot of them were ignorant. And you see Job even in this book saying, oh, when Yahuwah reveals himself to him in that whirlwind, right? He says something profound. He says, I have only heard about you. Remind you, these guys were originally Edomites. They never met Yahuwah face to face. So Ayub is seeing Yahuwah for the first time in front of him, talking to him. And that's why he says, I've only heard about you. I've never seen you before. So Ayub, even though he was very a blameless servant, he kind of, it seems like the book is portraying that he didn't have as close of a relationship intimately as Masha did. He didn't get that opportunity yet because he would have crossed over at some time. He was born an Edomite. He would have crossed over, and we don't know when exactly he got grafted in. So, but the whole book itself is showing that he was in the right. It's not that he was sinning against Yahuwah, and Yahuwah wasn't in the wrong either with testing him. It's that Job the whole time is misunderstanding this, thinking that Yahuwah is attacking him, not realizing that Yahuwah is allowing the devil to do all that to him. He's allowing the devil to do it to him, and Yahuwah is confident that Job will still not curse him. That's why in the beginning of the book, in chapter 1, Yahuwah says, having you considered my servant Job, who is blameless. It even says right here, there's a certain man in the land of Uz whose name was Ayub. That man was a true, blameless, righteous Yali, abstaining from everything evil. So obviously, if that's who he is, he was not the one in sin between him and his friends.
But Doug, don't you think that the father already knew that? Because it says that he knows everything, right? So he already knew that Job wasn't gonna defile him.
Yeah, but Yahuwah was kind of trying to make a bet with Satan, basically. Is what was going on. He's like, I'm gonna allow you to test my servant, put my servant through some things, but in the end, I know he won't curse me. And Satan, his argument was, the moment I take these things away from him, he'll curse you to your face. That's what's going on in the whole book. So this is why I tell people, read a book like Job. You have to read every single chapter. You're not even going to understand it reading select portions. You're not gonna understand it. The whole beginning of the book is that Satan, he goes up to heaven. He goes to take whatever you want to call it. Yahuwah calls him up there to take into account what he's been doing on the earth, and Satan's like, he's basically trying to find someone to tempt his sin. And and Yahuwah's like, having you considered my servant Ayub, because Yahuwah is confident that Ayub can stand the trial, basically. And so Satan takes that challenge and he messes with Ayub, but Yahuwah says to him, you don't harm him. You don't kill him, you don't harm him. I'll allow you to take his material things from him. I'll allow you to do this, do that, but you don't harm him. And that's what happens. So Satan's the one that causes his house. All that happens to his physical house, and all of his possessions. All those marauders and stuff like that. That's from Satan. So a lot of people don't realize that that's what's going on in the book. But you'll see at the end of chapter 42, Yahuwah calls out Job's friends, and he says, "You guys have sinned against my servant. You have done wrong. You have spoken. They sinned with their mouth." So basically the whole ideology of Job being in sin in that book is a false. It's a false view of the book. It's a distorted view of the book. And so you basically, most people get that idea because if you look at the Masoretic version of it side by side with the Septuagint version, it's very different in certain verses. And I think the Masoretic version was trying to portray something different, possibly, that it was trying to maybe promote a false narrative is my opinion.
Well, the only
Because
thing that happens is that Job gets into kind of a little bit of a pity party.
yeah,
Like, I wish I was never born. I wish the day that my mother gave birth had
yeah,
never come to light.
yeah,
And that's why at towards the end, before 42, Father says, stand up like a man, Job.
mhm,
And he gets, and he tells him, he goes through all the things. Are you the one that makes the sun set, all
mhm.
these things he goes through? Are you the one that created Leviathan? Are it's those chapters are fantastic. And it's
Yeah.
so interesting.
Here, oh, my bad, Mom. I didn't mean to cut you off,
No,
but
no,
I
it's
just
cutting
wanted,
you off
no,
too.
I just wanted to show Marissa proof of what I'm talking about with his friends. So if you start here in
Mhm,
42, I think it's verse 5. I have heard report of you by ear before, but
mm,
now my eyes have seen you. He saw Yahusha.
mhm,
Wherefore I've counted myself vile and have fainted. So he's counting himself vile. He's humbling
mhm,
himself. He's
mhm,
being humble this whole time. I esteem myself dust and ashes.
mhm.
And it came to pass after Yahuwah had spoken all these words to Ayub, that Yahuwah said to Eliphaz the Temanite, you have sinned, your
Yeah.
two friends, for you have not said anything true. Meaning everything Eliphaz said and those other guys said were lies in
Mhm.
Yahuwah's eyes. They're
Yep.
all false. And your friends, for you have said nothing true before me, as my servant Ayub has. Now then, and he's actually telling them, now you got to atone for this. Now you got to offer me sacrifices. So you can read there. It's in Job 42, verses 7 to 8. So this is what I mean. We got to be careful from our upbringing in the church not
Yeah.
to take these false narratives from these books. Like another thing too is people portray Jacob as the bad guy and
Yeah.
Esau as the good guy.
Yeah.
Like Jacob's a deceiver. Jacob's not a
He's
deceiver.
not a deceiver.
Number one. Number two, there's so many false narratives the church
Oh yeah.
preaches that people like we unintentionally, I'm not even trying to attack anyone, we unintentionally take these false narratives from the circus, from the circ,
Mm.
and then we try to insert it into the scriptures. The fact of the matter is Esau was always wicked. His parents did not want him getting the
Mhm,
baraka. His
mhm.
dad knew what was going on, because it seems like his dad was, acting a little bit, because, his dad's like, I don't know when death might
Die
take me,
soon. Yeah.
and yet he's living several chapters after.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's something going on with his dad. I can't say for sure doctrinally wise what's going on, but there's something going on with his dad in that situation. And his mother even said, no, it would not be sin on you, Jacob. It would be sin on me
Yeah.
if it's sin.
She did what she
So
had to do.
so there, and you have to understand the prophecy when they're in the womb. Yahuwah
Mhm.
promised the promise to Yaqub, not Esau.
Right.
He never promised it to Esau the Baraka. He never
Mhm.
promised that his seed, would get all these promises. So the fact of the matter is Esau was never going to get the promise to begin with,
Mhm.
or the birthright to begin with. So that there, you got to kind of look at it from the whole viewpoint of what was leading up to that. Esau selling his birthright
Mhm.
before that. Okay, Esau not caring about his birthright for a measly pot of stew.
Mhm.
Okay, that shows you his character. Yahuwah, it seems like Yahuwah already foreknew who Esau was going to become. That's why he says, I love Jacob,
Yeah.
I hate Esau.
Mhm.
And it's very clear that Yahuwah, elected Jacob. He elected the
Yeah.
seed of Jacob, the seed of Israel. He might have elected certain Edomites to be grafted in, but as far as a whole, a lot of the Edomites are even destined for destruction. In Obadiah chapter 1, you can find it. A lot of what I'm saying can be backed up by Obadiah chapter 1, where a lot of Edom is destined for destruction because of what they did to Israel, what they did to the apple of Yahuwah's eye, the
Mhm.
real Israelites. Okay. So there, because he even talks about, you try to mount yourself up as an eagle, and sit among the nests of the stars, which to me is, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But to me, that's pointing to our space program. our space program, if you look at what is it, Apollo 11 or 13, one of them had an eagle on a nest in the logo of one of the Apollo missions. It was like an eagle on a nest among the stars on top of the moon. So it's almost like Yahuwah foreshadowed the kings of the earth and all that. And Edom spiritually in Obadiah 1 can also refer to the 10 kings of Revelation and all that. And the kingdoms, the kings of the earth who are going to be destroyed. So I'm not trying to say every Edomite, was destined for destruction, but the majority of Esau's lineage, it seems like it was always going to happen where the majority of them were going to rebel and be heathen and not want to be in covenant with Yahuwah. And it seems like Esau wasn't even as wicked as his descendants became. Some of his descendants became because it seems like he made up with Jacob at some point when they're walking with one another. They're walking to one another, reuniting. He hugs them. Jacob kisses him on the cheek, like they embrace. So even though Esau was not loved by Yahuwah, there was at least a little good in him. Now it seems like after that, his lineage, a lot of the Edomites after Esau were worse than their own ancestor. They because you can read about it in Obadiah, they rejoiced when Israel fell. When they were casted out among the nations, they didn't try to help them. Yahuwah was rebuking Edom for that, because that's still their brother. That's still, and Yahuwah is rebuking, the Edomites for not doing anything, sometimes even joining in with Israel's enemies, to defeat Israel. So anyway, but it's very interesting stuff like that. But yeah, I do believe that's a picture of election where Yahuwah says, I've loved Jacob, I've hated Esau. And so anyway, but that's what I truly believe about that. And yeah, I understand though that's what a lot of people are taught about the book of Job. I understand, but you really got to read the whole book to get the understanding of what's going on here. And it's really as I would say as early on as chapter 1, like my mom said, as early on as chapter 1, it shows you that Ayub was blameless. Yahuwah considered him blameless in his sight at that time. So the issue here is that we've been taught that if you're not obeying Yahuwah, bad things are going to happen to you. If you obey him, good things are going to happen to you. And we've been taught that as long as we're obedient, things are going to be easy. And that's not the reality. That's not how life is. So that's the problem too, is that we're looking at that with almost like sometimes unintentionally looking at it with a corrupt prosperity gospel goggles, looking at that book and not even knowing it. But that whole idea that everything's gonna be easy as long as you're obedient and you're operating in the Father's will. You don't realize how wrong that is until it starts happening in your life, where the more obedient you are, the more the devil attacks you, and the more you feel like it's getting harder. And that's why I kind of tell people that want to enter into this walk, I'm not trying to scare them, but I do let them know, like just like Yahusha said to his own disciples, count the cost before you accept Yahusha. Count the cost before you get into this walk. And Yahusha metaphorically allegorizes this. Counting the cost before you enter the faith is just like a soldier, right? Who has to figure out how many soldiers, or a general has to figure out how many soldiers he needs when he goes to war. And it's like you count the cost before you go to war. And from my experience, the closer you get to Yahuwah, the more obedient, your walk is going to get like 100 times harder. 100 times harder. And I mean, we're promised that. That's why scripture says that, through many tribulations, we must enter through many tribulations to enter the kingdom. And unfortunately, this is what the church is not taught. They're taught everything's easy. It's like all butterflies, and we won't have to, that we won't have to do anything, that there's, there's no, there's no action being done in our faith. That is just, it's just basically head knowledge, and there's no necessary changes we need to make and all that. So I think that's part of the problem too, is we have all this indoctrination in us, that makes us look at the book of Job like it's something else, because almost every other person I heard explain it, especially from the Christian religion, they try to explain Job like Job was just super self-righteous and he needed to be corrected. And it's like they don't read the last chapter of the book of Job. Like, because I think in both versions, right? Both versions, Mom, verse 7 all the way down talks about how his friends were the ones in sin,
Right.
not him.
Right.
So it's almost like the way preachers preach about it, it's like they don't read the last chapter of Job.
No.
It's like they just completely ignore the last chapter. But anyway, sorry for that rabbit. That's completely on me. Sorry for that little tangent and rabbit trail from me. But anyway, so let's see here. I think we might just end this for tonight, only because I think the next chapter is pretty long. And we're already looking kind of late on my side. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this study of First Chronicles chapter 1 and a little bit of expounding here about election and Esau and Jacob and all that situation and what really was going on in the book of Job. Hopefully you enjoyed all that commentary. So all of our brothers and sisters out there, have a great rest of your Shabbat. Hopefully you guys see this as soon as possible on YouTube when it's uploaded. And Shabbat Shalom. All right, let me just